Hey, before I kick off the podcast, I just want to shout out Next Door Clothing. Next Door, a clothing brand based out of Bondi in Sydney. They're making really nice jeans and shirts and hats. So go and check out their full range at nextdoorsydney.com. They're also artists, so you can go and check out a range of art. They put on rad parties, and I love what they're doing. So nextdoorsydney.com for the full range.
I'm having a good time.
You are?
Yeah.
I can tell.
And we are rolling too.
Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Terrible Happy Talks. Today's guest is Edward Dangerfield. Edward is a breathwork, movement and meditation specialist. Edward is trained in nervous system health, Chinese massage and pressure points, breathwork, nerve flossing, Gong, Biofield Energy Healing, yoga and meditation. He constantly studies modern approaches to anatomy, physiology, neuroscience and developmental patterns. Having been caught in an avalanche and suffering from PTSD, Edward went on a path to discover how to heal himself. Edward is passionate about using breathwork and movement to heal the nervous system based on his own lived experience, research, training and years of clinical practice. Edward is the founder of Biology of Breath and Breathwork Bali. He has spoken at various hospitals, schools and conferences to promote the power of breathing to create balance in life. Ironically, I met Edward for the first time a couple of months ago while I was literally in an ice bath holding my breath. True story. And I've said this numerous times, but the universe seems to decide who is on this podcast. So, underlying Edward's vast knowledge and experience into the practicalities of breathwork, meditation, movement, energy healing and beyond, ultimately he is building individual empowerment, life ownership, collective consciousness, and most importantly, being of service to others and helping ourselves in the process. Today, Edward is with me to share his journey so far, his experiences, challenges, and hopes for the future. Edward Dangerfield, welcome.
Thanks so much, bro.
Dude, got there. It's been a big day.
That was epic. That was a great bio read and intro. And
dude, thanks, man.
Thank you.
You're an epic guy.
Thanks,
What an epic resume, dude.
Yeah.
How does it feel?
Oh, I guess it is. I don't know. It's like, I guess it's still landing, honestly.
Is it?
Yeah. When
Why?
someone reads that back to me, it's, I guess because life took such a big left turn and I'm still kind of like sinking into that. And
Okay.
so it's still, like there's still a freshness and a newness to all of this. You know, it's like this creation of identity. And I guess part of me is a little bit resistant to identify to certain things. It's like that fear of an old sense of ego returning, like a building myself up beyond like what I actually do. I help people breathe, you know, it's like
yeah. Like you're growing into that identity.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, is that how you feel?
Yeah, it's a duality of like, yes, I do all of those things, and it's, you know, I suppose there's a quality of just wishing to remain like humble about it, just being like, just teach people how to breathe.
Yeah, like when you say just teach people how to breathe, like let's just get straight into it. Like, can you go deeper into that? Like, what are you actually teaching them to do?
Well, ultimately to regulate the nervous system, release unprocessed emotion that's stored in the cells and tissues. So getting complete on trauma.
Right.
Yes, I was like, there's a depth to it for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, like the reason it's like I said in the intro, I was very much immediately attracted to who you are and what you do because breathwork is something I've been experimenting with and learning about, and in all honesty, to manage my life and some things that I'm feeling. And it was no joke when I was, having an ice bath and actually breathing when I met you. And I've wanted to delve deeper into it, and I feel like really compelled to spread the information because it's just had such a profound impact on me.
Thank you.
So that was part of the reason why I really wanted you on. So, so the work I've done is I did a 12-week Wim Hof course that I paid for online and got new videos every week.
Yeah.
So are you familiar with that?
Yeah. Totally, yeah. One of my good friends is a Wim Hof teacher in Vancouver.
Okay.
Yeah, and so he's actually trained alongside me in one of the trainings that I've helped support in Canada, in the modality that I teach and practice, which is CCB, conscious connected breathing. And so we had a bit of crossover with him and learning some of his techniques and understanding that way. And then, of course, like in the world of breath, Wim Hof's he's the leader, right? And he's like spreading it. I mean, anyone that like hikes up Everest in a pair of board shorts is probably going to get some attention in a really good way. And yeah, so I think that's awesome. The online course with that conscious approach in the way that he teaches, yeah, it's great for raising levels of awareness. And, you know, for me with the breath, there's just so much more.
Like, what's different to what you do compared to what he does?
Yeah, thank you. So it's a conscious approach. So basically what that means is it's prescribed. So it's like 4 inhale, 4 hold, 4 exhale, 4 hold. That's a square breath. And that's like something that we're bringing our mind to our breath, and we're really rigid in that. And we're just like, this is what I'm going to do. Here it is, right? So you do, 20 reps or whatever it is you do with your retentions, and everyone gets the same prescription. So it's like, regardless of actually what's going on internally, you do the same thing as everyone else. So it's not a tailored program.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. And then, I mean, there's 2 pieces there. The first one is prescription, and the second one is prescribed for everybody, which is awesome. So it's like, you know, from a business perspective as well, and for spreading breathwork, great. Lots of people get to experience it, and, you know, it's creating beautiful flow. So what I teach and practice is called conscious connected breathing, and it taps into the natural wisdom of the body, and it allows the body to change the rhythm of the breathing essentially in a self-hypnotized state.
So the body to change the rhythm of the breathing.
Yeah. So I don't like to really share the specifics of the technique because I don't want anyone to practice it without training and guidance. So I won't go into like the depth of it, but the essence really is that once we breathe in a certain pattern for a repetition of a few minutes, we actually start to self-hypnotize.
So I was going to ask you, do you go into a trance-like state?
Yeah, so it's full trance. So essentially what's happening is once the mind is attached to just the breath and is able to stay with it, then the blood chemistry shifts and it changes the brain state.
Right.
So then when we're in that state, we can actually start to change the rhythm of breathing naturally. So when I say like we can, it's just like the nervous system changes the rhythm of breathing and we become the witness.
Would it be, could I say that like the nerves of the brain are firing in with the nerves of the body? So like I've heard of saying like the nerves that fire together.
Wire together. Yeah, Hebb's law.
Yeah. Is that what happens?
Yeah, so it's more, yes, I'd say the best way to describe it is we're perfectly synchronizing the 4 directions, which is a Canadian native teaching: body, mind, emotions, and spirit. So how that looks is the body-mind, which is always one, but we think of them as separate, and it's useful in sometimes to separate those out, but they sync up along with the emotions. Defining the emotions as blood chemistry, it's released by the endocrine system, by the glands, of which, I teach from the place of there being 7 major gland centers, which is aligned to yogic philosophy. So I'd say the 7 chakras, the 7 glands, they produce blood chemistry. When we breathe into a gland, but when I say breathe, just separating out air and breath. Air is a gas made of carbon dioxide, oxygen, and a variety of other things. Air fills the lungs, but we breathe all the way through the abdomen. So when we take an inhale, our diaphragm actually moves down through small, large intestine and all the way through the pelvic floor, which is the 3rd diaphragm of breath.
Right.
So breath, we can actually breathe through all the way through into our root, basically into the root chakra, which is I use that analogy as the coccygeal body. So a coccygeal body is a small cluster of cells that sits in front of the tailbone, and it excretes the blood chemical, the hormone, that's responsible for feeling grounded.
Grounded. Let's go explain grounded. Like feelings of contentedness?
Well, actually like feeling in the body, feeling grounded, feeling on the earth. As opposed to feeling like light would be the opposite, or like heady or airy or spacey.
Okay.
So which is much more like 7th chakra.
Like literally like connected to the earth?
Yeah, and connected to the pelvis and the roots. Right. So like feeling the support of the earth below us.
Okay. And that then translates into a benefit for the individual of what? Feelings of happiness?
Well, I would say from the root, it's more actually that sense of security. Safety,
okay.
groundedness, tribe as well. We associate all of those qualities with the root chakra. So here's the thing. If someone's not breathing into their root, i.e. the breath, the diaphragms aren't moving. When we take an inhale, the breath doesn't move down through there. They're not going to feel that quality of security, safety, connection, tribe. Right. So they're going to be living from that place. And when I look at someone's breath, I lie them on a treatment table and I read their breath, I can see how much breath's moving into the pelvis. And if there's not much breath moving into there, they're not going to feel grounded.
So, there's a bunch of questions going on in my head.
We just opened a can of worms, didn't
we?
Great.
I love starting strong. Let's do this. Let's go. But, okay, so I've got a few questions that have just popped out of that. So
Please.
If someone's not feeling grounded,
yes,
that could mean that they're struggling with feelings of isolation and disconnectedness.
Totally.
And then that would translate into feelings of depression, anxiety.
Potentially.
Social isolation.
Yeah.
And then they would look for things to do to remedy that.
To change that felt sense, to change how they're feeling. And
oftentimes it can be something that's really easily accessible, like drugs and alcohol, or addiction to other things like shopping, technology, etc.
Yeah.
And the next question is, if someone's not breathing in their pelvis, does that mean they're more susceptible to lower back pain?
For sure. Like sacral, SI joints, into the hips. So interestingly enough, we can start looking at patterns of behavior. If someone's not feeling into their pelvis, it's probably likely that their relationship to sex and intimacy is going to be like used in some way to get that feeling. So when we look at patterns of addiction, we can kind of say this, on occasion there's certain addictions and there's certain patterns that people use to change the way that they feel. So like emotion's the driver. Emotion and behavior is the driver of behavior. It's not thought, it's feeling. And the way we are as humans, we're trying to change the way that we feel. We're trying to manage our emotional state. And so if we're not feeling connected, that can lead to promiscuity.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that leads on to other problems.
Sure.
Guilt, shame, remorse.
Yeah, which are also emotions that live in the sacral chakra.
Do they?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Well, mostly because I've experienced them myself. And then when I started to bring breath down into those areas, I noticed that those emotions fell away. So the first thing I always come back to is it's my truth. And then it's just like, I read it in a book. But for me, it's just like reading in a book's just never really been enough. I've needed to go deeper into it and just be like, this needs to be my lived truth. So when I talk about these things, it's not something I've memorized intellectually. It's something that I've felt in my own body. So I speak from that place of lived experience. Yeah. So, being open, my relationship to intimacy in my early 20s, I was a bartender in a ski resort, and it wasn't aligned. It wasn't integral. I was doing, I was having a great time with a lot of other people having a great time, but we weren't conscious and aware of really the energetics of what was behind it and what we were doing.
What a way to start, man. This is epic. No, I mean, in all seriousness, it seems to me when I observe the world and human nature sometimes, it seems like humans have to put themselves through suffering before they can find their truth or initiate change. Do you think that we have to suffer to go on a journey of truth?
No.
Great, thank God.
Yeah,
because I keep hurting myself. All right.
Yeah, so for me, I'll run with this.
Bro.
Pain for sure is necessary for us to remember what is and isn't working for us. So as an example, like when we touch a fire, we're only going to do that a couple of times because the pain is so memorable that we're never going to do it again. And
that's profound.
That's why we learn. However, the suffering is attaching to that emotion and sensation.
Right.
And suffering is created if we either cling to pleasure or try and avoid pain, which is inevitable in learning.
And is suffering building neurological pathways?
Yes. So for me, the reason suffering happened in my life was for a couple of reasons. One of them was I was unwilling to feel certain emotions, so I tried to avoid them. And in doing so, I stopped feeling other emotions that were almost identical in their breath pattern and signature. And then we can wire into pain. So sensations we can move through rapidly as humans if we stay in the space of the witness. So if we can just actually be with it and be supported, then we can move through pain. And emotional responses don't actually last that long, but we grab onto the story around them, and then we ruminate on them, and then that starts to become our way, so that we then start to create them again.
Right.
And that's like, for me, that's the root of the suffering in our lives, is when we're like, we want it to be different, or we want a different outcome, or we're clinging on to something that just didn't happen. We're not here anymore.
Yeah. And do you think that, like, just identifying rumination and those negative feelings and sources of pain,
Yes.
like, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to get to is, like, what actually led you to actually be brave enough to actually identify it? Because I feel that, and myself included 100%, is that I don't want to identify it, and I will continue to avoid it. But then there's people like you who just go, like, really deep into it, face it head on, and go into this complete mode of honesty, self-honesty, and, like, what actually compelled you to go on that journey? I mean, it might have been a particular moment, or was it just an innate feeling that you knew was like an inner purpose, I guess? Yeah,
thank you. I think it was probably alcoholism, if I'm really honest. And that was just a coping mechanism, as we kind of talked about, using socially acceptable substance to change the way I was feeling. I think the pivotal moment for me, that left turn that I kind of mentioned, was when I was caught in the avalanche. You kind of mentioned that, but I was working in the restaurant business, and I was skiing in the day, working in the restaurant at night. Had a pretty blessed life. I was skiing with a friend and in the backcountry, and I got caught in an avalanche. Super traumatic experience. Nearly died, and came out the other end of that, and my body was still thinking it was in the avalanche. So in essence, like, I got pretty messed up, and then felt like I was in an avalanche, and then my adrenal glands were on the whole time. And then I started having adrenal fatigue, scanning for threat, thought, I was in trouble, which I actually was, but, like, I wasn't anymore. And so then what happened was I started to try and numb that pain and manage what was going on. And at that time, like, clinically, in North America, when someone has PTSD or anxiety or depression, the protocol previously, like 5-6 years ago, across the board would have been antidepressants to numb the pain. Numb the pain, you numb the joy, you numb everything. So it's they're just a blanket.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I started to sort of spiral downwards. And so, I think my inquiry into all of these things came on the back of a deep contemplation of suicide. I was standing in the middle of a 4-lane highway in Peru, 9 beers deep, about to throw myself under a bus. And then it was just like, no, there's another way. And, I had a good amount of money in the bank at that time, and I just sold out of the restaurant post-avalanche. I was just like, I got to go and change some shit in my life. and it was a really pivotal moment.
Dude, I'm really sorry to hear that, but I'm also, it's really inspiring,
Thank you, bro. I mean, it would suck if I was still drinking and if I was still in that same space. And now, looking back, I see the gifts of that. And there's no way to rush that process. Now I understand why it happened, and now I have, like, deep appreciation for it. But we can't just jump to gratitude. It doesn't work like that. And I had to go through, like, ultimately 2 years of suffering and challenge and like, not being a very nice person to be around, and just figuring all of my stuff out. And deeply grateful for my parents and friends and family for supporting me through that time. I dove in. It was like, and it wasn't like, this is going to be really great, I want to help other people. It was like, I'm messed up and I got to figure my stuff out. So that was kind of, and that's a really motivational place to live from and to research from as well. And then to also get really creative and, like, all right, well, let's spend 4 months in a stone cottage solo and see what happens.
You did that?
Yeah.
Dude.
Twice.
How was it?
Yeah, it was mind-blowing.
Was it by yourself?
The first time I was just coming out of I was actually in a super toxic relationship, and I moved there with my partner at the time, and that rapidly fell apart. for a multitude of epic reasons. And then I was solo there for a bit. And then a year after I did the same thing, I went back and just lived there. I think I was there about 5 months. Yeah, and I lived solo.
In the mountains?
I was in Portugal.
Portugal?
Yeah, my parents bought a farm there.
Okay.
And they live on this farm. They have a bed and breakfast and a saltwater swimming pool. It's epic. And I just built a small little stone cottage. I converted this shepherd's cottage.
Amazing.
Yeah, to a little off-grid dwelling. And I lived off-grid for 5 months. I had a small solar panel and water from the stream, gravity fed. And I lived in it was just this deep inquiry into relationship. How am I in relationship to myself, to food, to water, to the sun, to the land, to the birds? Yeah, so I went on this like...
living off the grid type vibe?
Yeah, full off-grid living. And I wanted to produce no waste. I was like, how do I live in total harmony with the land? So farming my own food and... Amazing. Yeah, I realized how disconnected from nature and source and all things that nourished me, really deeply nourished me. I realized how disconnected I had been to those things. Yeah. So it was like a really deep coming home.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Dude. Like I'm just sitting here just going, like I'm just identifying with a lot of things you're saying, you know. Yeah. And going back to that moment you had where I guess we could describe it as a rock bottom. Yeah, totally. You know, I'm constantly inspired when I hear people who actually come back from that, you know, because, like I think a lot of people get to rock bottoms of their own type and it doesn't have to be as dramatic as that or they don't have to be an avalanche, and sometimes it could just be purely that rock bottom could just be in their head and that feeling of just being sick and tired of being sick and tired and feeling like they've got nowhere else to go. Yeah. But they do. Yeah, totally. I think like the low points are the turning points. Yeah. And that like, you know, I found the answers when I hit the bottom of the bottle. Yeah. And it was like, and a lot of people do, you know, like, yeah. And again, that's what going right back to that original question. I'm sort of in this funny place at the moment where for many years I've thought, well, you have to suffer and you have to go through trauma and you have to go through pain in order to find yourself or be the best version of yourself, because otherwise you haven't paid your dues and all that kind of bullshit, you know. But I'm realising now, and I'm actually 7 years sober myself. Yeah. And to say that out loud, I was very protective of that for many years and very because I was still coming to terms with my personal identity. Yes. And I was horrendously scared of ridicule and judgment. Thank you. And so I guess what I'm going back to, I feel like I'm on a journey different to yours, obviously, but I'm kind of just on this trip at the moment. It's like, well, why do we have to suffer? And I'm kind of like, if I want to go to the next level in my life, do I have to suffer more? You know, and I don't think we do. I'm still firmly in the no. But would you agree with me if I said that a lot of people think that they do have to suffer? I think a lot of people feel that they have to suffer as well. And I think differentiating out feeling and thought. And so I think we are actually unfortunately raised currently, for the most part, in a culture that creates in our nervous system the felt sense that you have to suffer, you have to work hard, life has to be difficult. All of these unconscious, subconscious beliefs, money doesn't grow on trees, you know, which it does for the record. And so like in the form of fruit that you sell, it's just like that's the relationship of, you know, of nature, right? And so we're so supportive. But without going down that whole path, I think unconscious, subconscious beliefs that we're given from childhood actually hardwire into our nervous system. Some examples of that, you know, and I've studied a lot of childhood patterning, development, and conditioning, and ACEs, the Adversity Childhood Experience Study, is a fascinating, massive, very in-depth read all around how there's a precursors to cancer we can directly correlate to childhood experience. So it's just like if someone's had a traumatic childhood, they pattern their nervous system and their breathing in such a way that it changes the way they breathe, it changes their gland function, which then gives them a higher percentage rate of cancer and even specific styles of cancer. Dude, do you know how healing that would be for people just to hear what you just said? Yeah, it's huge because there's two things that come through. The first one is we can understand why it's happening, and the second one is we can take radical self-responsibility to change it.
And that's where it's just like, it's no longer such a great mystery anymore. But the cure of that is basically regulation of the nervous system, which is totally available as well. So,
which is a physiological. It's purely physiological.
Yeah, the regulation of the nervous system is the two branches of the ANS, the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic branch. One is basically activation, fight-flight response, and the other one is relaxation, rest, digest. One is the inhale, and one is the exhale. Inhale activates, like that's why you yawn, you bring in more oxygen. Exhale rests and relax, which is why you sigh, you let go. It's like, bam, like we just actually relax. Every time you sigh, you relax.
Yeah. I love that. When we talk about breath, I mean, I said, actually my daughter was throwing a tantrum today. She's 5, you know, she's allowed to. And I actually, because I'm conscious of her breath. And so when someone cries, their breathing is, you know,
totally.
When someone's happy or laughing, it's like a lot deeper and like and longer.
Totally.
You know, when someone's scared, it's like, you know, and it you know, really, it's that simple, really, isn't it? And, and that's, and we all do it, but it just, are we conscious of it when we're doing it? And we're not.
Yeah, that's it. And so we've mapped out that every breath pattern has a corresponding emotion because it's stimulating the glands of the endocrine system to change the blood chemistry, changing the way that we feel. And so obviously, if breathing is changing feeling, then feeling is changing breathing. There's a feedback loop. And then we throw thought in there as well. And then we've got basically the recipe for understanding how we're motivating ourselves in life, how and why. So then when we start to like raise our level of awareness and consciousness over our breath, we have a momentary pause that's available. So now we can suddenly just catch ourselves. And it's that momentary catch in whatever situation we are that allows us to respond instead of react. And that's the moment where we suddenly become more... Yeah, we can become masters in the environment that we're in because we can catch ourselves without dropping into that emotional flood, and then an animalistic response. We can keep the higher brain centers open.
Respond instead of react. And look, there goes the thunder and the lightning in the back.
We're sitting in a Balinese rainstorm. It's so
great.
epic.
There's been a couple of things you've been saying, and then all of a sudden the thunder will go, and like, but you're sort of in the zone. So, man,
honoring the unseen forces of Bali and the spirits of this land.
Yeah, it's pronounced here. When I first, I've lived here for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I've been coming to Bali on and off for years. I mean, it's quite close to Australia.
Yes.
And people would always talk about, the energy. And I'm like, whatever, don't give me that shit. Energy, this. But now, man, dude, the energy.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm feeling it, man. Like, I don't know if it's the volcanic soil that we're on or whatever, but there's some days, dude, I'm like, I'm not going outside. I'm not talking to anyone.
I love it.
There's a gnarly energy out there, dude. I actually felt it yesterday.
Yeah.
And then I won't go into it, but then got some crazy news. So yeah, I believe it.
I believe it too. And it's interesting working, I was working in Canada for some time and then working here. And what I've noticed is it's like an accelerator of the treatments. It's like everything's magnified here. Like intention is magnified. What we focus on, we create it. I have witnessed I create it so much more rapidly here in Bali.
Do you think Bali attracts the people that need to be here?
I think it either attracts or rapidly repels. It's like,
it does.
Yeah, it'll just 100%. Kick your ass and send you out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been welcomed here. Like, I feel energetically so supported and welcomed by, everything that's unfolding in my life at this time. It's just been like, I'm in the right place for sure. I feel that
that's how I
every
feel.
cell.
Amazing.
Feels really good.
It does.
Yeah.
I've never felt it before.
Yeah.
I was here about 10 years ago. I was surfing down at Uluwatu and it was like sunset and I was on my motorbike. I just finished surfing. And I pulled over to watch this sunset, had my shirt off, the warm air on my body, and I'll never forget it. I just had this overwhelming feeling, and it was like almost this voice in my head that just went, "You're home. Welcome home." I've never felt that before, except and I've travelled, but I've felt it here.
Beautiful, bro.
And I have seen people get chewed up and spat out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's real. It's full on.
Yeah, I think what happens is it brings everything to the surface. Like everything, and so it brings all of our stuff to sit with and be with and see and the good, the bad, and the ugly.
That's the island of the gods, bro. Island of the gods. So tell me, what was your childhood like? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, it was massively traumatic.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
okay, well, let's get straight into it then.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like I love looking. Now I look back. I used to think that my childhood was amazing, and now I look back on it and I recognize that it wasn't. And that was just like part of that was just like coming to terms with that. And yeah, I mean, like in the lens of how I grew up, it would be considered in my country to be like amazing and privileged, but when I look at it from childhood development and trauma, it's actually not. It's brutal. So essentially, my parents, like, it was a very toxic household from 0 to 3. At 3, my parents finally divorced, and then so there was just a lot of volatility in the house at that time. And then when they separated, I was with my mum for some of the time, and then to my dad for the holidays, back and forth, and there was just ultimately conflict and just not an enjoyable scene between the two of them. And then every time, that's happening, there's just a fracture that's occurring in the psyche of the child. Mm. And so, yeah, that was kind of how I grew up. I went to a private school in the UK, which was, the whole culture is just so incredibly challenging for children. It doesn't promote growth, learning, connection. It's about, competition. It's about ego reinforcement of being better or being the best. And yeah, it was a really bad scene. And that coupled with parenting style that I received, recognizing that my parents were doing the best that they could, but it was, they were just passing on multi-generational trauma, basically.
At what age did you sort of have that awareness and realize that you didn't feel right?
Yeah, it was probably...
Was it in your teens or...?
No, that was the thing. I mean, I just had a pattern of masking it and getting on with it. I think the first indicator was in my early 20s. I just left the UK and moved to Canada. And I was like, I'm done. Like, forget everything that's going on in that country. I look back on it, and it was probably more the family, the toxic family system I grew up in, as opposed to, just like ways of communication and lack of boundaries, lack of respect, all of those pieces. Mm. And then I moved to Canada to probably escape, ultimately live halfway around the world. Yeah. And then I dropped into ski bum culture, which was just, adrenaline, pushing hard, the restaurant business. And the quality that I developed of, being an overachiever, type A overachiever, I really thrived in both the restaurant business and the ski scene, because I had the capacity to essentially push through as opposed to deep listening. And so what that led to is the classic of burnout. So it's like amazing at pushing really hard and then burning through and out. Yeah. And
Were you a good student?
Yes and no.
In the early years, elementary school days?
At school, no.
Did you like school?
No.
Why? I mean, I know why you didn't like private boarding school, private school. Was it a boarding school?
I wasn't boarding, thankfully, because that would have been the whole next level of trauma.
But I guess even through
abandonment issues and all that fun stuff.
I can imagine. It's heavy.
Yeah, it is heavy for those people that have gone to boarding school, and it's just like, it's really what that does for patterning and conditioning. Like, it ought not to be allowed, to be honest with you, but it is still. But anyway, I won't go there too much. But like, even when you were like in elementary school, you didn't enjoy it? Didn't like the institution? No. It was just, I think there was just a lack of actually caring of what like children wanted to do. Yeah. And it was all about like, just getting good grades. Yeah. Got good at learning how to pass exams as opposed to learning.
Yeah, right.
And then, that started to shift when I became 16. I actually started to study design and woodwork, metalwork, and creativity. And that was like, I was actually a little earlier than that. I was probably 13, 14. And I started to get quite passionate about that creative element. And then, of course, just where I was at in culture and society, that was not allowed. Gotcha. I mean, the truth of it was like, I was... I am living my mission and purpose now. What I do is what I ought to have trained in, like back then, and I didn't for a variety of different reasons. But like, I know for a fact I'm here to help, guide people on healing journeys and work with the nervous system. I just got there in like the most backwards way possible, which is perfect because like I look back on all of the things that I went through and know that was necessary. Like, as an example, I spoke to that really super toxic relationship, which was codependent. And there's me being the, over-accommodating empath, essentially married to someone at the time who was a total borderline narcissist. And, then we start tracing that back as to why that felt so normal for me. When I look at my childhood, it's just like, oh, yeah, I see these patterns as well that are here.
Can you give a short definition of a narcissist?
Yeah, it's someone who, like, what I would see is someone who puts meeting their own needs without consideration of anybody else's. So for me, it's like, I believe in win-win. I believe in abundance. And so you and I can both meet our needs at the same time. They can coexist in this space and time. In a relationship, that's also available. And so the idea is reciprocity. But for me, someone that ultimately has had a really traumatic childhood, like more than mine, starts to move into this space of meeting their own needs at the expense of others, because that's all they've ever known. So when they were going through their childhood, their parents weren't there to support them, give them what they wanted. So they had to learn maladaptive behavior. So they learnt manipulation. That
was my next question. Like, does it become like sociopathic?
Yeah, I mean,
they're manipulating.
Yeah, for sure.
Constantly.
Yes, and it's their way, and it's what they learned in childhood, and it's unlearnable, and it evolves around taking radical responsibility for self. It's just like with that comes a sense of entitlement. So it's like, I deserve this, but at the same time, there's a huge unworthiness. So it's like a push-pull. So it's challenging to be with. And the essence is like the opposing pattern of that is the overachiever or the overgiver, and then those people have a tendency to work really hard but give everything away, which is just what they had to learn in childhood, was they had to give to be loved.
To feel validated.
Yeah.
Or feel like...
And have needs met.
Yeah.
So, anyone that's been enmeshed to a parent has had to, ultimately like people please or at some point probably sacrifice themselves or their values or beliefs to receive love or have basic needs met.
So good. I'll be honest with you, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking constantly about my daughter right now. Yeah. It's confronting me, bro.
Yeah.
It is. Like, it's so delicate and so complex. Obviously, it's never going to be perfect.
No, and that's the beauty of it. And then when we come back to that, like the pain and the lack of perfection is perfect, because we're all here to learn lessons. And so we have to, like, for me, what might give you a little bit more faith and hope is I come from the belief that children choose their parents.
I've heard this before. Can you explain further?
It's on like a spiritual level of the idea of the individuated soul. And it would come from the idea that a soul, comes in on a mission to learn a lesson. And so it chooses its parents to raise it in such a way that it gets to receive that lesson. So from the bigger piece, like, I'm eternally grateful for my parents for being the individuals that they are in their ways, because it allowed me to enter into this time and space with the mission of being a healer. Right. And so I learned that from a young age. I learned to read my mother's energy from across a room.
Right.
And so I can do that with my clients. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I had to figure out how to live with that and manage it effectively. And this is the idea of being born as an HSP, a highly sensitive person. And I'm like, when I'm training practitioners, I'm like, can you guys feel this? And they're like, no. I'm like, oh, okay. And it was just that recognition that we're all sensitive to energies, and some people are more attuned than others. And I started to recognize that I was born quite attuned to energies, and I was raised in an environment that encouraged that. So interesting enough, that high tone, dramatic childhood honed those skills that I was born with that enables me to be proficient in what I do now.
Was it hard to come to terms with the fact that you are highly sensitive to energies?
Yeah.
Like, at what point did you come to terms with that? Like, was it on this journey of self-realization? Was there a particular moment that you went, hey, I'm heavily affected by other energies?
Yeah, I think it was. There were two pieces that came through. The first one was boundaries, and it was the recognition of what's mine and what's everyone else's. And then, like, staying in my own business. So that was just like, I can feel everything, but I don't need to.
Staying in your own business.
Yeah, it's just not my business. Like, it's their business.
We do get caught up in other people's business.
Yeah, we have a tendency to, right? And so, like, part of it in life is just like, wow, that person's going through a lot, and I don't need to support them through that right now because I'm having a sandwich.
Yeah.
So now I've developed this capacity to sit with it and be with it. And then the other piece was self-care. How do I manage myself so that I can stay resilient? And that was the journey of good daily habits and practices, being super mindful of substance and everything down to caffeine, cacao, like everything. Yeah. So just raising my own level of awareness around how food impacts me and sleep and all of those pieces so that I can continue to live in an environment where I'm super sensitive to everything that's around me. And I love working with empaths because it's like, they're like, oh my God, I can feel everything. And I'm like, all right, let's work on your boundaries. Let's work on your self-care. Let's turn what you're feeling as a challenge into your greatest gift.
Harness it.
Yeah.
Harness your superpower.
Totally, bro. And that was, I think, the pivotal point for me was just like, oh, this is a gift.
Yeah.
It's not to be treated as like a problem.
You've harnessed your superpower.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Are you caffeine sensitive?
Yeah, massively, bro.
So am I, man.
Yeah, it's adrenals.
It is adrenals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just fires the adrenaline gland and just like, whoa. And I still drink coffee once in a while.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I'll have like one a week, usually on Sunday mornings.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's been one of the hardest things for me to deal with since I stopped drinking.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
Because for me, caffeine was just a great alternative.
Yeah.
It's mood altering.
Yeah,
and,
that's an upper.
It's an upper.
Fires the adrenaline, brings up my heart rate rapidly. I can feel it. Yeah, all my glands turn on. I start to sweat a little bit more.
Does it change your mood?
Yeah, I mean, I'm normally like an Energizer bunny. So like when I'm like, I get super excited about like things like breathwork and awakening. And then like I have a coffee and I'm just like, all right, if I'm doing a talk like to a group, to an audience, it's just like, I have to be so mindful of like caffeinating like well in advance and not directly before. Because otherwise I just speak too fast and I'm just too excitable. And I just have to like tone it down for the room. And just really
it becomes counterproductive.
Totally. Right.
Yeah, I have the same problem all the time.
A little jittery as well. I've had that sort of slight jittery energy.
Yeah. Yeah, so do I.
And I noticed it depends on what kind of coffee it is as well. So like I have a friend who's recommended single origin shade grown. Okay. He's super tech. He's amazing.
Right.
Dr. Suki Muka, shout out to him.
More of a mellow high.
Yeah. Yeah, he says it's just like, and it just doesn't deplete. It just gives you that nice buzz, but without taxing the system.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I'm still yet to test that one personally, so I can't speak.
Because, like, I've tried to give up coffee numerous times, but I really enjoy it.
It's a beautiful flavor, and it's a ritual as well. It's a ceremony, right?
Flavor.
When we bring ceremony to these things, it can be such a
ceremony.
Yeah.
And I like that it can be good for starting conversation and
for sure.
deep. And I love deep conversation, and it helps with that sometimes.
Totally.
And on a morning, but I've had the same issues that you were just mentioning. Like I get jittery and it becomes counterproductive.
Yes.
And with my nature, I can't just have one coffee. I've got to have like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And then it's really bad. Like it's something I've got to be conscious of.
That's firing adrenal glands.
It is. And when I'm not running well, like mentally, or I'm busy and stressed, and I sort of I hit a rock bottom, like in just generally in life, because life's getting overwhelming.
Yeah.
Coffee has to be the first thing to go. But I've experimented with different ways to mellow the high out, and I find when I drink coffee with milk, like a milky coffee, like a latte, it makes me really jittery. And then I research that. I'm like, why is that? And then I have a long black and I don't get as jittery. I'm a bit more, it's more of a mellow high.
Yeah, cool.
And I read, and I could be wrong here, so don't quote me, but milk gets metabolized, the lactose in the milk gets metabolized by your body like glucose. So and caffeine is an accelerator. So what's actually happening is it's not the caffeine that's making you jittery, it's the acceleration of like a sugar substance into your bloodstream.
Yeah, wow.
It's being mainlined.
Yeah.
Is it correct? I don't know. If you're out there, and if you're an expert on this,
I like
send
that.
me a DM.
I like that. I think that's legit. I'll go along with that.
Go with it. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why I have these bulletproof coffees, and I'm really a big believer in using like good quality fats and oils as a primary source of energy as opposed to carbohydrates, because they burn cleaner and they're more sustained. And there's all sorts of research out, and I'm not saying I'm right, but I know what works for me.
So good, bro. And I love that. I love that pursuit of your own truth.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah. And that's what I encourage with everyone as a client that comes in and sees me. It's just like, well, I don't know what works for you. Like I've been I've tried paleo. I was a paleo diet for 2 years, and I just had to clean myself fully, and it was amazing.
Yeah, man.
And then I just got to a place where I was just like, I'm going to eat a croissant today. And it was just like, wow, this is epic. And I was just like, wow, there's actually, it doesn't affect me at all. And that was just my journey of like going through a full cleansing protocol for a couple of years.
Yeah, same. And I actually kept a food journal.
Yeah, cool.
And it was so profound. Of just jotting down things like, yeah, I had a coffee with milk and it made me feel like this. Oh, I'll try it again. Oh, I did it again. Same thing. Okay, It's the milk. Let's try a long black. Like just little things like that.
So good.
And when I get it right, when I get the diet, the food stuff right, I just feel like I'm fucking unstoppable. Like it's
bro.
yeah, and but I guess I've got 2 small children and their needs outweigh mine at the moment. So yeah, I don't know.
There's such a balance there. It's just like
tricky.
For me, I've loved spending a lot of time with the native Canadian elders. So I was living in...
Did you?
Yeah, so I was living in British Columbia in BC, and I was living in the ski resort Whistler for about 15, 16 years.
No way.
And just north of there, there's an area called Mount Currie, which is a traditional, beautiful area, land settlement, like so pristine waters and mountains. And I connected with a few of the elders there, and I actually started going to some of their ceremonies, some of their sweat lodge, and started taking groups of men from inner city Vancouver out to native land, camping there, and we would do these men's retreats. Anyway, the reason I share that is I learnt a lot of their traditional teachings, and one of them is the 4 directions. It's a medicine wheel. I kind of touched upon it earlier around body, mind, emotions, and spirit. And another way that we look at that is also the 4 directions of, we start with ourselves. So it's the self, for the family, for the community, for the planet. And so it's this idea that we have to start with ourselves. And I was kind of raised in this messed up ideology that we have to put everyone else first. And if we do that, all we do is deplete ourselves. So this is people pleasing 101, right?
And then you're use to anyone.
No, exactly. And that's covert narcissism. It's like we're pleasing everybody else to modify their experience so that they're happy with us, as opposed to just allowing them to have an authentic experience and living our truth. And so I had to peel that back in myself and see where I was doing this, and just be like, well, part of it came from just like having the courage to be disliked. And I'm just like, I work on the third principle. A third of the people that listen to this podcast probably are not going to enjoy what I'm going to say. A third of the people will be indifferent, and a third of the people will love it, and it will really resonate. And if I work with that consistently, I'm managing my own expectations of how people are going to receive me.
Amazing, dude.
Because I might trigger the shit out of people with what I'm saying here. And that's okay.
It is okay.
Yeah. So for me, that circling back, it's all about me first. And it's me first, like, to meet my basic needs, not me first, to drive a Ferrari.
Yeah.
So it's just like still to live like simply in harmony with nature. And once my needs are met, how do I support other people in meeting theirs? And that's where I've had this path of self-care so I can show up fully with my gifts to support other people to live in that way as well.
And it's being of service.
Yeah, totally. But not to the detriment of me, because then it's not sustainable.
Good point.
Yeah.
Not to the detriment of me.
Yeah.
And that's what I've struggled with, because I really believe in the power of being of service to other people in order to get out of your own head.
Sure.
Because I've lived such a long life of selfishness.
Yes.
And it was making me sicker and sicker.
Yeah, thank you.
But I got lost in putting people first before those basic needs like you described. And when I hear you say that, it's actually just been really reinforcing for me the importance of it.
Yeah.
And we do forget, and then you just said it's actually a form of covert narcissism.
Totally. Yeah. And I fully recognize those patterns in myself. And
you recognize you're in a narcissist?
Like, yeah, for sure. In a healthy or unhealthy way. Like, how was that showing up? And I recognize like 3-4 years ago, like it was definitely 6 years ago, it was definitely in a pattern of like, I owned a restaurant and I wanted everyone to have a great experience, and it was perfect. It was really serving me. But when it was showing up like in relationships or even in certain business agreements where I just couldn't be firm or clear in my no, and I didn't have good boundaries in that way, I would betray myself to keep other people happy, which is like not sustainable in any way. And then, as an example, in that toxic marriage I was speaking to, people rapidly can assess like when you're going to betray yourself, and they start to see that as a pattern consciously or subconsciously, and they just start to work with it. And then they just start to meet their own needs, knowing that I was going to keep betraying myself. And so I had to really look at that and just see like, okay, like where is this showing up in my life, and how do I get clear on how I can be of service in a way that's actually out of integrity. So that's the shadow side of the healer, is like the martyr savior. So it's like I'll throw myself,
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just, so I just kind of, I've really focused on that. And the key piece has been boundaries around work as well. Like I work 4 days a week in clinic and I have 3 days off, and that's what I need to sustain. And I had a huge amount of guilt over that.
Why?
Well, it's decided that we've got to work five days a week, 40 hours.
That's hard, yeah.
It's this old program that was bred into me. And I'm now in this path of like, how do I work less but create more impact and more abundance? Like work less. Well, obviously I do what I love, so that
be the most effective.
Yeah, totally.
Without burning out.
Totally. And that's that key piece around the self-care. Self-care is self-love. And I think that Protestant religion in the UK that I was raised, under in that guise of, kind of really encouraged self-betrayal in that way. We have to put everyone else first. And so, it's just really that assessment of needs versus wants. It's like, once my needs are met, then how do I give more time to, family and then community? And I love the order of it in the native way, because it's this premise that if I take care of me and my family, then we are community. We are taking care of community. And then if community takes care of itself, then the planet takes care of itself.
Yeah.
So if we do 1, 2, then 3 happens automatically, and 4 is just the default. So if we do it in any other order, it's not sustainable.
No.
And if we try and save the planet without our own self-care, we have forgotten what our relationship is to food and water, and we start to damage the planet. So it's just like, so that was again like and I love these ways of establishing right relationship with all things.
Yeah, with all things.
Yeah, including the breath.
Including the breath, and you think it all comes back to the breath?
Yeah, for me, like it all comes back to the breath. It's a foundation of life. For me, it's the inhale and exhale is the pulsation, expansion, and contraction. Yeah. It's present in all spiritual teachings and all wisdom traditions, and every major, healing and esoteric healing practice. We always come back to the foundation is the breath.
Yeah, I've always, because conversely, I've always been really attracted to the power of food and nutrition.
Yes.
And I'm just actually interested in it. I mean, I'm a health teacher.
Yeah.
And I've always found it funny how so many, like breathing and eating are the two most fundamental things a human being can do.
Yes.
However, I'm always astounded by how much they're neglected.
Yeah.
And not even considered.
It's amazing.
So people are trying to save money. What I always find funny that they'll budget on the food that they're buying. They won't go and buy the good quality, organic, nutrient dense fruit and vegetables. They'll go and look for something that has been mass produced unethically using growth hormone and GMO and all that stuff to save money. But it's like you're putting that in your body. You're not. And I guess the same with the breath,
Yeah, I mean, so that definitely is a shortcut, right? It's just like we're scrimping on ourselves, and we're basically robbing from our own future.
Yeah, we are.
We're not investing, and it's like every meal is an investment into our own health, investment into like our well-being and the future of ourselves, our communities, our families, the planet.
Yeah,
that's what I see as food. That's my relationship to food. But yeah, when it comes to food, I mean, that was certainly my starting point was nutrition. It was just like, okay, how is food impacting me? And, when I started to unpack more about the breath and understand more about the nervous system, what I came to recognize was it was actually my nervous system that was affecting how I was digesting.
Okay.
So we essentially, if we're in a high tone, i.e. our adrenal glands are firing more, we have a tendency to not absorb as many nutrients from our food.
All right.
So we need to move into a higher tone of the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest response.
Ah, okay.
So this is where like afternoon nap after lunch actually is like epic for the whole body systems.
Yeah, right.
And in a lot of cultures that's really present, the siesta, right? Especially in hot climates.
Yeah.
And it's so good for nutrition, so good for digestion. And then the other piece is our breath pattern has an impact on how we breathe into the small and large intestine. So some people, they only breathe in the upper chest, and some people, they only breathe like in the third energy center, just below the rib cage. And if they do that, they're not breathing into the stomach and or into the small and large intestine.
Could you give us a little tip of how people could actually improve their ability just on a daily basis to improve that breath in the stomach?
Yeah, for sure.
What's a little thing they can do? Okay.
Yeah, super simple. So
what's a simple thing?
The human hand is the most advanced and technical neurofeedback device we've ever made. There's more nerve endings in the hand than any other area of the body. Per millimeter, it has more sensitivity of touch than anything we've ever created.
Right.
And so if you place your hands on your stomach and breathe into them rhythmically for 5 minutes, you'll actually start to repattern your breath.
No way.
Yeah. So you've created a feedback loop from your hand up the nerves in the hand to the brain and then through the body with the breath. So if you focus on breathing into the belly with both hands on your belly, the neurofeedback loop that you create actually starts to repattern the breath and how it moves into the stomach. And if you pay attention to it in just 5 minutes, you'll actually hear your organs will start to move. So you're creating a visceral movement.
You'll hear your organs move.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I hear my stomach growl. You hear that?
Yeah, totally. So actually what happens is all of your organs, like small, large intestine, liver, kidneys, stomach, it all starts to create more visceral movement. And so the viscera, the organs start to actually move around in that space. And the tone of them will change.
No.
So instead of holding on tension, they'll start to all soften.
No way.
Yeah, and then that has a huge impact on our digestion. Now, the key of this is, like, one tip, do it before you go to sleep.
Dude, I'm doing it tonight.
Yeah.
Let's end the podcast now.
We're done.
Go and do
Let's
it.
all put our hands on our belly and breathe. So the crazy the crazy thing is, if you repattern your breath right before you go to sleep, for the next 8 hours, it's going to repattern. So this is where we create
your breath will.
Neuroplastic change. Yeah. So this is, so we breathe for 8 hours overnight. Our breath pattern is subconscious. And when I train someone, retrain them to change their breathing, it changes their sleep pattern, but it changes how they recover overnight. So it's not about the conscious day stuff like Wim Hof. It's all about how you breathe overnight. How do we repattern your subconscious breath pattern? And so, the technique that I use is rapid, and we can start to do it ourselves by placing our hands on an area of the body, like even the pelvis. We can breathe fully and deeply down into that space, and then we can fall asleep, and our breath will move fuller and deeper down into that space for the whole night.
No way, dude, I'm doing it tonight.
Do it.
I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Wow, man. So I've got too many questions for you. It's funny, like I've
This is
had
a 6-hour podcast.
It's fine. There's no time, bro.
Let's keep rolling.
Yeah.
You've got young kids.
No, it's fine. They're asleep, man.
Yeah, perfect.
I'm here all night, dude.
Let's go.
Quick,
Let's do it.
Buckle in.
Yeah.
I see. I've got my own personal energy healer. She's also she does body work. She massages.
Cool.
She gets in and she sorts me right out. And she's a big Russian woman. She's amazing. And I love the language she uses with me. You know.
Yes.
So I've had a bit of lower back pain. I've been sitting down a lot. Have been super busy. And that's partly because of my own making. And she works primarily on my hips.
Yeah.
Okay. In terms of like doing similar things to what you're talking about, like making me breathe. And she puts her hands down and sort of like, massages my the muscles in my hip joint and stuff like that. And she said to me, it was just today, she goes, "Shannon, you're too fucking emotional. That's why your back's fucked. Stop being so emotional." Like, that's her advice to me.
Yeah.
But you actually explain it so much more eloquently.
Well, thanks, bro.
Thank you, man.
I would really encourage you to stay as emotional as you are.
Really?
For sure, bro. That's one of the parts.
It can get pretty up and down, bro.
Yeah, and that's part of the human experience.
But what if it's to the detriment of your loved ones?
Yeah, I think it just depends on the response. Like, is the response appropriate? And then what am I doing with it? I mean, you can have the most crazy internal landscape, and how you choose to motivate that on the outside is totally different.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like, for me, I can sit with absolute inner torment, and then just,
You can sit with it?
Yeah. Now. Yeah. It's a practice.
It's fine. It is a practice,
thanks, bro.
yeah.
But I think, as I kind of mentioned, for me, what I've befriended is that sensitivity, is that emotional quality, is that vibrancy of life. and also recognizing like what are the habits that I can have to self-regulate when it does start to get to the edge of like my capacity. Oh, okay, like this needs to move. Like, can I go for a beach run or do an hour of breath work, or, you know, go and do a hot cold session at Ammo where we met?
I know how. Great.
Yeah, epic. You know, and so good for regulation of the nervous system, right?
Flushing of the cells.
Yeah. And the piece there in the hips, I mean, it's great when, you know, when we're using breath work, we're in an altered state of consciousness, which makes us really malleable. So the whole nervous system is basically very plastic. So like neurologically, the nervous system is neuroplastic. We can increase neuroplastic malleability through trance states, which is also the research into psychedelics.
I was just about to say.
Yeah. That's
coming up regularly in this podcast.
Yeah, cool.
Would you mind sharing your morning routine? Do you have one?
Yeah, I do. And it's basically the first hour of the day is devoted to connection to self. And so there's two things that will happen. I'll either go surfing like I did this morning. So I was like hour and a half of surfing, and that was my mindful practice. And that was obviously like combination of like interval training, because it's a paddle out surf. So definitely. Interval training and breath work. And I got held once, so that was definitely breath work when I was under for a bit there. So that's one thing that I'll do, and that's also a quality of playfulness and creativity, and lots of different like left brain, right brain going on as well, coordination. So that is like epic for me. I can't surf at the level that I like to surf every morning. So the other thing that I do is an hour of breath work in the morning. And so I just had 2 epic surfs the last 2 days. Tomorrow morning it's going to be, I always wake up 6 a.m. So 6 until 7 will be breath work tomorrow morning. And my morning ritual, I use a variety of mostly Kundalini yoga breathwork techniques that I've adapted and modified a little bit, and I put them in a sequence that works really well for me. And so I do a 1 hour ritual of that. So it's a combination of basically moving breath consciously and then retentions as well. So I guess, you know, similar to the Wim Hof style.
More of a focus, because I find the Wim Hof breathing is really good in the morning, but I don't like to do it at night.
No, it's massively activating, especially when you're doing a retention at the top. Like every time we do a like full inhale hold at the top.
Well, I don't do it at the top. I do it on the out breath.
Yeah. Okay.
And I find when I first get out of bed and do it, and going back to what you were saying about the central nervous system, I've just come out of a sleep. My longest breath holds are at 5 a.m. when I get up and do it.
Yeah, epic.
It's amazing, because I go into these deep states of meditation whilst holding. So I guess maybe I'll explain do you mind if I explain the process
Please,
quickly?
Bro.
Yeah, like for those of you that don't know, like the process I go through, and I'm definitely not an expert. I'm just someone that's an enthusiast who has had a personal success with it. But the method that I go through is a range of deep breathing, where the in-breath is deeper than and longer than the out-breath. And I do it quite vigorously. It's sort of like a and let the out-breath fall out. Okay, and this is the way I was taught.
Cool.
And I do that for around 40 seconds to a minute. And I'm actually getting to a point where I can feel it now. So I start to get the tingling lips, lightheaded, and my fingertips start tingling, and then I know that's the point to stop.
Yes.
And what's come out of it is the power of my ego, because my ego says when you get to that point, just go a bit further.
Yeah.
You'll be okay. But that's when people pass out.
Totally.
So then I release all my air on the last breath, and then I hold my breath in the morning. Yeah. Because the central nervous system is it's the parasympathetic system, isn't it? That's
we're coming out of parasympathetic, and the adrenaline glands are coming online to wake us up, and we're starting to move and get fired up.
And then I hold my breath.
Yeah.
And then whilst I'm doing that, I feel this calmness come over me.
Yeah, beautiful.
And then what happens, I do a body scan from the top of my head all the way down through my face, and I just consciously try to relax every muscle organ in my body in order to conserve oxygen. And I just get this feeling of, I feel like I get to a point where I could do this forever. And and then the ego comes back, and I'll sometimes I hit the stopwatch, because that's what I was taught to do.
Sure.
And I'll look at the time, and I get to 3 minutes, and then the ego says, I probably need to breathe, and I start gulping and fighting it, and my ego says, just keep going, just keep going. Yeah. And I don't know if that's healthy. I'm working on that, and maybe you can give me some advice. And then when I'm finally ready to breathe, I take a Deep breath in, hold that for around 30 seconds. And in that 30 seconds, because I've just got that one breath, I just feel so good. Repeat the whole process about 4 times and then meditate. And I have to do that just so I can meditate. And I want to meditate, but my monkey mind, I've always found meditating so hard. So,
thank you, bro.
Anyway, so I've always wanted to share that on the record, that's what I do. And hopefully someone hears it and says, well, I might try it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great protocol there. And
you think
actually,
so?
yeah, and the interesting thing is like when we look at the animal kingdom, what we're repeating essentially is a fight flight response followed by a freeze response. So that's us running away from an animal. And then when you hold exhale and then hold at the bottom, that's mimicking a freeze response, which is full parasympathetic shutdown. So that's playing dead.
Playing dead or hiding?
Playing dead.
Playing dead.
So that's like you've been caught, and then you go into shutdown, you play dead.
Yeah.
And then you take the full inhale and then a few breaths, and that would be like you've escaped.
No way.
So that's actually a trauma cycle of what we're talking about is trium brain theory. So that's the 3 areas of the brain: lizard, mammal, human. And that's how we evolved. And our nervous system grew in that way. So we started out as lizards, if you believe in the story of evolution. Some people do, some people don't. So anyway, if you believe in that story, we started as lizards, we evolved into mammals, and then in the mammals we evolved into humans. We built the neocortex on top. And you can see that clearly when we look at the brain, how the brain has evolved. We've got the limbic system, mammalian brain, and then the neocortex and prefrontal cortex. And so when we look at trium brain theory, we can see that we can stimulate different breath patterns that will actually access those 3 different areas, and those are the gateways between them. One of which is the amygdala. That's the gateway between emotion and higher, mid and high brain function. And that's that circling back, that's that opportunity to actually respond instead of react. So that's what you're training. So it's really amazing that you're training in that way. Yeah, and that's the science of breath. And, a lot of people that teach breath work don't understand that. Like, we're going super deep in tech here, but that's the neuroscience behind why we change breathing patterns. So here's the thing: when I guide someone in a breath journey, I'm going to move them through those states in a variety of different ways to mimic a fear response. We might get them reliving an old trauma. And one piece that's really important is to recognize that freeze response will kick in to protect us. And that's the freeze response is what happens a lot in sexual assault. So there's a paralysis that occurs to keep the body safe. And with that, then people are like, why didn't I scream? Why didn't I say something? Why didn't I fight? Well, because your body assessed the threat and it knew it would keep you safer by paralyzing you than attempting to fight someone who was clearly going to overpower you or had already overpowered you. And so, there's some amazing psychotherapists that are working now with these trauma theories in North America. Ailey Jolie is one of them in Vancouver, and she's got an amazing Instagram all about this. And so we've been going back and forth on looking at the trium brain theory and stages and branches of the nervous system and how we can use movement and breath work and a variety of other different techniques to actually get complete on these pieces.
Dude, so good, man. So good. Dude, it's been epic. It's been like an hour and 7 minutes, and I have seriously no clue where that hour and 7 minutes went.
Flies by.
How you feeling?
Feel great, bro. It's just fun. It just flows, yeah.
Do you need to have intermission? Like, you need to stop and take a few deep breaths?
I feel really good, bro. Yeah. Breath's flowing well. Yeah, it's good. It's just a fun chat, and I geek out really hard on this stuff, and it's my passion in my life. So,
like, here's a question sorry to cut you off there.
Please.
Sorry. Here's a question for you. Considering the current state of our world and the vast mental health issues that are impacting the globe and most countries.
Yes.
Do you feel like these kind of modalities are more important than ever? Breath work? No?
Yeah, I don't know. More important than ever. I mean,
what I'm getting at is, overprescription of sedatives and anti-anxiety medication and stuff like that is pretty full on.
Yeah.
So do you feel that these like breathwork modalities and meditation?
Yeah, I think
do you think it's more important than ever? Like, it seems like it's more people are becoming conscious of it and exploring it.
Yeah, more important than ever in as much as we have a mental health pandemic on our hands.
It is a pandemic.
Yeah.
I didn't want to use the word pandemic because
Yeah.
that word's being thrown around
Yeah.
at the moment.
Sure. I mean, like, you know, that when you look at statistical data for PTSD and trauma in the cultures that we've grown up in, it's a pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's unreported, and most people that come into my space and wish to work with me have a decent amount of trauma. Some of them have been like heavily working through it for some time. And the challenge that I think people face is that there isn't the skill set and the modalities widely taught to actually be able to effectively cope with this.
Okay.
You know, there's guys like, you know, I mean, Peter Levine and his work with somatic experiencing is phenomenal. Bessel van der Kolk as well, the Trauma Center in Chicago. They've both got amazing books out. Gabor Mate's been doing amazing work in Vancouver, understanding, you know, the body keeps a score, and all of these different styles of understanding now how we're storing unprocessed emotions cellularly in the body. The essence really is that those unprocessed traumatic experiences are affecting mental health. But there's a huge idea that mental health is the brain. But it's not. It's the human. And we need to rehumanize the idea that mental health is an overaccumulation in the mind, which means we've neglected the body, emotion, and spirit in the 4 directions. So anyone with a mental health issue probably needs to focus more on the body and their emotions and their spiritual health. And then they'll find that they'll rebalance.
Then the mind will.
Yeah, because the last thing we need to do is strengthen the mind. The mind's amazing. Like, it's super strong. Everyone's like running around with like, oh fuck, right? It's just like, okay, we're all good here. Let's focus more on the physical and the embodiment. Invariably, what we find is when someone's incapable of being with themselves, very much in the way like you have a breathwork practice and you are familiarizing yourself with your inner landscape every morning. And what I find is you drop someone into meditation, and if they can't be with themselves, it's because they've got a lot of unexpressed emotion that's caught up within them. So we can start to help guide them to release that. And then what happens is they are capable of meditation. They're capable of being with what's moving through them. But I mean, meditation can simply re-traumatize, especially, you know, and yoga is the same in the way that it's taught in the West. It's like...
Sorry, that's okay.
Yeah.
Can we go down that rabbit hole?
Yeah, sure. Happily. So like... You know, yoga in a lot of traditions was a one-on-one modality as a yoga practitioner and one student, and it was in a small space. So now we've taken that and we've business modeled it into the West, where it's a one-to-many business model. You got one instructor up the front, and you got 30 people in a room packed with mirrors, all looking at themselves with, you know, ego reflection and affirmation, and it's more about how they look than how they feel. And so then when we take that into like people who are teaching and cueing from a space of looking as opposed to from a space of feeling, I think that, you know, we're robbing people of the true essence of getting in touch with how does this feel in my body? Do I feel aligned versus do I look aligned? And they're totally different. And then beyond that, when you're massively activating people into these what can be very dynamic, challenging poses, and then you're giving them essentially a 2-minute shavasana, which is not enough to rest into parasympathetic tone, what we're doing is re-traumatizing. We're bringing up all of this old emotion. We're lying someone down for just 2 minutes, and then we're sending them out the door into the world. And so what you're doing is you're bringing up all of that shit, you're stirring the water, and then sending them out.
With overstimulated adrenals?
Yeah. And usually a high-tone music, you know, pumping too hard, lots of people in the room, push, go, go, go. Well, where's the listening here, you know? And so what I would prefer is just that quality where, you know, like if you've got a 1-hour yoga class, you're going to be doing like, the Shavasana's got to be like 15 minutes. If you want to drop people into parasympathetic high tone and they've just been pushing super hard, like they need a 15-minute relaxation. And the irony is like, that's the greatest gift you can give the class. And there's probably a tendency to be like, well, they're just lying there and not doing anything. And it's just like, that's where the work gets done. We're taking the memory from the limbic system up into the hippocampus, which is the area of the brain that remembers time. And so if we don't access that, we just stir all of it up and then we just send them out into the world. Well, that's great for a repeat business model, but I like to make myself obsolete. So I work with people such that they just don't need me anymore because they're self-regulating.
Respect, bro.
Yeah.
That's really cool. That's cool.
Yeah, well, that's the aim, right? I mean, there's enough people to work with in the world. Like, I don't want that chiropractic business model that you need to come back every week. You know, I actually want to work with people for, you know, like, you know, a period of time We develop a therapeutic relationship. They see the shift and changes in their life, and then they just go out and do it themselves. And then they check in with me like once every 2 months. It's awesome.
Is that the true essence of a healer?
Yeah, like you are your own healer. All I do is remind you of that.
Empower?
Totally.
Yeah,
I'm not doing the work. If I think I'm doing the work, I'm going to get exhausted. It's not me doing the work, it's you.
Yeah.
So all I do is guide you back to that true essence that you are born a sovereign, fully capable human, able and a miracle in and of itself to self-regulate. I just remind you of that fact.
Yeah, and actually build self-confidence and belief in oneself,
bro.
and then that has other knock-on effects.
Yeah, and then you're not relying on anything outside of yourself other than, the breath and probably still some food, let's be honest. I haven't mastered that one yet. Eating's too good. I know there are some people that live without food.
No, I'm not. No, not me.
No. Enjoy it way too much. And there is that enjoyable quality of living this human existence. So if we're going to be trapped in this meat suit, I may as well enjoy some really...
Trapped in this meat suit. That's what I'm going to call this episode, man. Edward Dangerfield, trapped in his meat suit.
I love it. It's so true. And and that was with the breath work. I have actually moved into those sensations of witness where I know I am a spiritual being having a human experience. I can feel my body. I can feel it fully. I can witness my thoughts, and I understand the emotions and sensations that are moving through me, all from the space of the witness.
Is that your personal interpretation of spirituality?
Yeah.
You don't identify with a particular religion?
No.
It took me...
All religions, for sure. I find that if I look at them, sorry to interrupt you, but if I look at them all, they all have the same
Definitely.
thread.
100%.
It's just like, and there it is, and there it is, and there. It's the same language.
And dogma.
Oh, sorry, different language.
Dogma.
Yeah, when it's taken and then like turned and used for the benefit of, someone in it. But I mean, anything that's organized at that point, again, like we're not encouraging self-responsibility. We're saying that this is the way. And I don't teach the way, I teach a way. I teach you a way that's worked for me, and then I encourage you to go and find out if it's going to work for you. And so it's that, and that's that whole guru mentality of like, this is the way you have to do it. You have to get up at 5 a.m. and do these chants and do this and do this. And I'm like, no, this is something that's fun. Explore it,
That's dogma. And it took me many, many years to realize that you could be spiritual without aligning with a religious denomination. And I thought I was really stupid for thinking that. Like when I had this realization that, hey, I can be a spiritual being. Well, I am a spiritual being.
Yes.
And I can have a sense of spirituality, and I don't have to align or identify with a religious denomination.
To label it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and I
you.
feel that a lot of people get lost because of that brainwashing that's occurred in our Western societies of that, you have to identify with a religion.
Sure. So it's like all religions are spiritual.
Back. They are.
And not all spirituality is aligned to a religion.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so...
Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. So yeah, you can be spiritual without needing to define yourself to one particular label.
Exactly. And it was really freeing for me.
Yeah, beautiful, bro.
Personally.
Thank you.
And I wonder if other people feel the same way.
Yeah, I mean, that was certainly, I speak a lot about my deep love and respect for the Native Canadian way. And it's not a religion, it's a way. And so I think I've aligned to that the most because it's not labeled as Buddhist or, I have a lot of respect for the tantric philosophies and Kashmir Shaivism as well. And I find that that's almost, there's a lot of parallels between that and the Native Canadian way. But it is this idea that for me, it's not about labeling it as a religion, but it's about the recognition that I am all things and connected to all things. And all things are connected to me. And that's that idea of right relationship. How am I in relationship to my chair and my breath in the water?
I find it very interesting that you are drawn to the Indigenous people of Canada.
Yeah.
I do. It's interesting.
It's just been such an amazing experience to sit in circle with them. And
ceremony?
Yeah.
Ayahuasca?
No, sweat lodge.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had two beautiful experiences with Mexican healers sitting with peyote, and that was an amazing experience and journey. And they were beautiful medicine keepers and carried it in a really good way. Would you mind talking about it? Sure. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. Can you go through the processes and sure. Just tell us about it. Yeah, for sure. I mean, one disclaimer is I only advocate the use of breathwork. So I'm a breathwork teacher and a nervous system specialist, and that's my focus. And the reason I I was drawn to specifically two styles of plant medicine, and I'll speak openly about it. One was psilocybin, magic mushrooms, as they're amusingly called, and yeah, you know, they're to be really respected in a very deep way from my perspective. And then the other one was peyote. And so I went into, the reason I explored this was because I'd done a lot of reading and research. And it was just like, I read Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, which was, you know, epic. And I was just like, wow, this is really cool. And then I just was sitting here and I was like, I just don't know. I have no experience of this, you know? I've read about it. I've read so much clinical research about trials of using psilocybin to work with trauma. And here I am as a trauma healer, and I've never experienced this. And so I decided to be able to sit in the seat of actually knowing. I had to live it. And so, yeah, that was it. So I started to cultivate a relationship to both of those substances in a very mindful and intentional way to do research, and knowing that there was a potential for dependency on either of those. And I just was really aware of how I was going to approach that. So, yeah, with peyote, I went to...
I'm going to jump in a second.
Please, yeah.
Dependency to psilocybin and peyote? Is that... I was under the impression, and I read the same book, Michael Pollan's book, and it seemed like a recurring theme there that they were non-addictive substances.
I think anything can be addictive. Yeah, I think a habit can be addictive, you know? And so it's like, whilst the substance itself doesn't tend to create a response in the body that we would then wish to return to over and over, I still believe that people can become addicted to ayahuasca, as an example, or any ceremony. I think
they can become addicted to it.
Yeah, we can become addicted to sex, and that's not an addictive substance per se, but the habit and ritual and how we're using it can be. So, yeah, I think anything can be. And it's just about the intentionality of why we're doing it. And are we moving into our pain to feel it fully and release it, or are we attempting to avoid? So I think that's the key with these substances, is that they're not actually avoidance. They move you into your shit. And so you have to deal with it. And so that's where I think they're less likely to actually be like someone wants to go into it, because it's actually increasing your level of awareness of self, including unprocessed emotion that may be stored in your cells and tissues.
And people could be addicted to pain?
So more that people could be addicted to avoidance.
Avoidance.
Yeah. Or people could be addicted to going into their stuff and then not recovering from it. That can become a cycle, right? And that's that can also become a trauma bond in relationship. People become addicted to the trauma of the push-pull of abuse. Yeah. So yeah, I just think we need to be mindful about anything that's external, because ultimately we're giving our power away to something else, and we're saying it's doing the work when really we are. So, you know, that said, like I have elicited, I from those substances, I can recreate the felt senses of being high in that way through breathwork. So just to make that really clear, I can get as high from a breathwork journey as I could from psilocybin or from peyote. And so, yeah. And so what I came to recognize is I don't need these substances to create the same sensation in my body. All I need to do is lie down and breathe.
But not as immediate.
Yeah.
As immediate?
Yeah.
Really?
I can release DMT in about 6 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Which is nice. And also we have to be really mindful of, because like DMT is a molecule that prepares us for leaving the body.
We're all holding.
Yeah, and we all can create it at any time. It's it's the spirit molecule or the crossover molecule, and it allows us to access altered states of consciousness. And so it's also can be quite destabilizing on the nervous system. And so with my breath protocols, I am very mindful of when I release that. So that's whether I'm doing it consciously. So I have a conscious protocol that I can release it with, and then if I drop into a big breath ceremony, then it may surface if it wishes to, needs to, or my body wants to elicit it at that time. So there's two different ways there. Again, it's like Wim Hof conscious, or the conscious connected breathing allowing. So I like the allowing.
With the psychedelics, I've heard they're very powerful in helping to neurologically mode behaviors and patterns.
Sure.
And they have a lot of success with people who smoke cigarettes and want to quit.
Yes.
Addicted to cigarettes because it helps them break the behaviour pattern.
Sure.
So what you're saying with this release of DMT through breath work, is it having the same impact on an individual who might go into it with a desire to break old and destructive behaviour patterns?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and the
Check.
neuroscience
Right,
of that
let's
is,
move on.
and we're done. So the neuroscience of that is the DMN, which is the default mode network, and psychedelics disable the DMN.
Okay.
Breathwork also disables the DMN.
Which can be regarded as where the ego lives, correct?
Yes, correct. And so that's exactly what you say. It's like neurons that fire together wire together, Hebb's law. So we get into this rut of, firstly, the brain starts to basically only think in certain ways. So we lose the greater capacity of left and right brain hemisphere connection, and we lose like the capacity to think in a myriad of different ways. We get habituated into certain patterns of thought, which can be really useful and can be very limiting. So when we take the DMN offline, there's a couple of things that happen. We can start to think in a totally different way. Left and right brain hemispheres are connecting, but also from the bottom of the brain, from the brain stem up through, we're also accessing the emotional intelligence in a different way. And so we can create, left to right, up, down, different thought spiral pattern and interconnectedness of what's firing within the brain.
So the individual should approach it with an intention
Always.
before they do it?
Like, yeah.
Not to be partied with.
Yeah, like... I'm not here to set rules.
I'm just saying. That was where my mind went because, traditionally, and I think that's why, you sort of laughed about its nickname, psilocybin's nickname.
Totally, bro.
Magic mushrooms. And it got that nickname because people were using them as a party to enhance a party situation. I don't know if we want to go down this rabbit hole, but...
Sure.
It sounds to me like it's more like a plant medicine that should be used with an intention to heal and cure as opposed to enhance a situation.
Yeah,
Would that be a better way to look at it?
I think everything has its place, right? And I think, everything's a ceremony. If we're going to like a concert and it's a beautiful piece of music and we're going with great friends, we can do that in a ceremonial way. So I suppose, again, it comes in what is the intent, from a more of a macro perspective, what's the intention? Is the intention to have an enjoyable experience, connect to self, friends, and, this beautiful vibration of music? But that's a ceremony.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so it's I guess there's more of a framing of it. Because then if we frame it in that way, we're going in without those lower vibrational frequencies we touched upon of guilt and shame. So if we can go in there from the space of the heart and we can be like, I'm doing this from a space of love, I think that can be really powerful. The other thing is how am I affecting anybody else? Because it's really important to be mindful if I am a human and I'm taking a substance and I'm going out and it's changing my behavioral qualities, I need to be very, very conscious that I'm acting with respect for everybody around me.
Gotcha.
And so I'm not disclosing to everybody in that space that I'm going to be, on 2 grams of mushrooms. So it's other people around me, they're not aware of that. And that I have a quality of respect for them. And so for me, I would just encourage people to be, firstly, in a ceremonial way, with good containment and in an appropriate setting, and also with correct guidance. And by guidance, someone that is experienced and trained in supporting journeys.
Very responsibly handled response.
Thank you, bro.
Dude, well done, man. High five. Dude, you nailed that. It was. I respect. I 100% respect what you're saying. It's very pragmatic and just very human.
Yeah, thanks, bro.
So well done, man. It was a really good response.
Yeah, and I guess I don't want to make people wrong, and then at the same time, how do we do this responsibly, right? That's it.
Gotcha, yeah.
Man. It's just
totally understand.
It's an amazing world for exploration, and that's what this human experience is about.
100%.
And at the same time, we talk about pain and suffering. It's just let's not learn from those shitty mistakes that I've made. Let my mistakes. Let me speak to my mistakes. Let me speak to my error and the pain and suffering that I've been through, so that other people don't have to. And I suppose that's my kind of idea around raising children. It's just how do I not pass on multi-generational trauma, but instead passed on, some wisdom of the lived experiences that I've had in such a way that, my son can be a sovereign being and he can be like fully awake and conscious in the hope that he doesn't have to heal from his childhood.
Yeah. Dude, it's so rad. It's so nice. I almost feel like that's a good way to end, bro. You want to keep going? Let's keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, it feels like a great way to end. I mean, I
just think it's a pretty profound way to end because, that's what I want for my children, dude.
Right.
And it's so primal. And I used to think I understood what it meant to be a responsible parent before I had kids.
Yes.
And I thought I understood how heavy that responsibility can weigh on people. And now that I have children of my own, I fully understand it, and it taps into something profoundly primal.
Yes.
And it does. It gives you this purpose in this crazy world while we wear our flesh suits,
Totally, bro.
And yeah, man. I guess when you strip it all back, it just comes back to love, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, that passing on for me, it's just like, how do I pass on what I know whilst honoring his experience and his individuality?
Yeah.
Like he's chosen me as a parent and he's an individual soul and he's here on his mission, and it's not up to me to say you are going to do this or you need to do this. It's up to me to create a safe environment for him to explore. And ultimately that's what I do in the clinic. It's just a safe environment for us to explore the human experience and the breath and all emotions. And so that's kind of what I'm creating for him. That's my intention, dude. Every time I spend time with him.
Amazing.
Yeah, there's some hope there for sure.
There's hope. There's people like you in the world, bro.
Thank you
You're
so
spreading
much,
some
brother.
really good. You're spreading some good messages, and I think you've probably already, with the work you do, maybe planting some amazing seeds to help people make change that they will pass on to their children.
Yes.
And those same philosophies that you talk about, and then and their friends and family, and it's inspiring, dude.
Thanks
do you
so
realize
much,
how inspiring that is?
Yeah, now I do. Now you say it like that, and sitting
really
here,
is.
I'm starting to witness now, and also we trained a few practitioners now, and we got 10 people operating in Canada, and we're bringing some more through this year, and starting to pass those teachings on as well, and again, it's just that continuum of like my teachers who taught me, I have so much love and respect for them. And now I'm passing that on to people who are also carrying those teachings in a really good way. And that feels so right that we're sharing breathwork and we're sharing nervous system health, and people are supporting people. That's what I love.
People are supporting people.
Yes.
Dude, now listen. I always ask guests to come to the podcast with a cause. Given the hectic nature of our lives, well, not hectic, but I didn't communicate to you prior to the podcast that, hey, I want you to come with a cause. Some people come with charities that they want to advocate for.
Yes.
And have you got maybe something you'd like me? And what I do is, like, if someone has a charity or a cause that they want to advocate for, or even sometimes just like a philosophy or a book or something they want to put out into the world, and I'll actually put a link to it in your show notes. Cool. And then that will follow your episode around the various platforms via the terriblehappytalks.com website, which then will guide you to platforms such as iTunes, Spotify, Buzzsprout, and Stitcher, where you can listen to this episode on. Yes. So off the top of your head, is there anything you'd like me to add, or do you want me to just talk about it after the show and we can add it later? I think in the spirit of education, I think is what I'd like to offer up is just, if this has resonated with people and they want to learn more, I think we kind of touched upon it, but there's 2 books I'd like to recommend that people actually, get on Kindle or a paper copy and delve into so that they can raise their level of awareness and consciousness, and so that they can be more sovereign in their choices and live with more ease and grace. So the first one we talked about, and it's just an amazing teacher, Dr. Joe Dispenza. And he's got a few books out, but Becoming Supernatural, his most recent book, is something that I'd really like people to just get their hands on and take some more radical responsibility for themselves and their own journeys. And then the other one is from
a real inspirational teacher as well, Bruce Lipton. And Dr. Bruce Lipton, his book is called The Biology of Belief. And it's all around what we believe activates or deactivates certain strands of our genetic code.
Sorry, Bruce Lipton, was it?
Yeah.
I'm just jotting this down.
Thanks so much, bro.
Man.
Yeah, and so I just really would I would just encourage people. I think the biggest thing that we can always look outside to another cause. But what I would like to do is invite people to look within, because it's me first. So how can they better self-regulate, show up in the world so that they can support their families, the communities, and the planet?
And that's what I'm personally going to take out of it. And I actually know that you should put yourself first. And having really put a lot of work into my personal sobriety, I've learned that lesson, but I forget the lesson. And I need to be reminded of that.
Yeah.
And as
it's
you
a
said,
practice, bro, isn't it?
As you said, it's like covert narcissism when you start putting other people first.
Yeah.
It's just like, what? Yeah, like that really resonated with me.
Yeah.
And I'm going to work on it as of tonight when I go home, put my hands on my stomach and breathe.
Yes, bro.
And then think about not being a covert narcissist.
Yeah, thank you.
Is that what I'm going to do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good.
Listen, man, dude, it's been so epic. I'm so glad I had you on. I'm so glad that I eavesdropped on your conversation in the sauna.
Yes.
And then I'm so glad that there was 3 ice baths.
Yes.
And I'm so glad that you decided to hop into the ice bath that I hopped in.
Yes.
Because usually when that happens, I sit there thinking, why couldn't that guy have just sat in the other ice bath? Why does he have to come in my ice bath?
Why is he so close to me?
Yeah,
why is he breathing like this?
Dude, it's awkward. Stop breathing on my neck.
It was a beautiful introduction.
Dude, it was like, I'm like, stop breathing on my neck. And there's so many times I've been there and I'll actually sit on the edge of the ice bath and start doing breathing and people just look at me and just roll their eyes and go, Changu.
Yeah.
Changu,
you were on it. I was like, this guy's
I couldn't
awesome.
give a shit. I was like, I just don't care.
Yes.
And then the right dude hopped in that ice bath.
Having the courage to be disliked right there, bro. I was like, it's my people.
My people. Yeah. Now, listen, man, I'm primarily a one-man show, but you know what? I'm going to say I'm not a one-man show anymore because the lovely Christina, the photographer, is here shooting this episode. She takes beautiful photos. Go and check out her website at christinathephotographer.com.
Oh, I like
That's
that.
actually not her name. She's probably got a last name. Her middle name isn't the, and her last name's not photographer.
Yeah. But it works.
It just works. And
it could be.
Christina, I just want to say, I love having you on set. She does we talk about energies. She brings an energy and it's so important to me and this show. She brings that. So right on, sister.
Beautiful.
And I always want to give when I first started out, I had all these goals. And I was like, one of the goals is I always want to give my guests a gift. So I've got a little gift for you.
Oh, come on.
Let me go into this bag of treats. So first, I've got 2 gifts. The first one is the Terrible Happy Talks Circle logo sticker, and I only give these to people that have been on the show. So you're now a Terrible Happy Talks alumni.
Wow.
All right, so stick it wisely.
Or you can think about that one. One second.
Or just chuck it out. It's whatever you want, bro.
Maybe on the surfboard.
Only, on the surfboard. Dylan Longbottom put one on his surfboard. Do you know who that is?
No.
Dude, one of the greatest big wave surfers of all time.
Yeah, no big
he's
deal.
actually got a shop in Bra where he is a profound surfboard shaper. Yeah, amazing guy.
Cool. I don't know if I can put it on my surfboard.
Dude, put it on. And the other gift I've got for you, all right, is a pair of flip-flops from Indosol.
Come on.
Dude, size 11. Yeah.
Bro, this is epic because I drove past the store today.
And we're like,
how's this for synchronicity? I was like, Indosol. And I looked at it and I was like, I was driving to Echo this morning to surf. Drive right past it and I looked at it and I went, you know what? I just love companies like that have that mission and purpose. And I was like, I got to check the store out. And this is Bali energy manifestation right here.
100%. And Kai, Chris and Kyle are like the good homies. Like they're the best dudes.
Amazing.
And I actually vowed when I started this podcast that I wouldn't align with anyone.
Yeah.
I was just going to be all me.
Yes.
But after meeting those dudes and what they're doing, and they're doing it with such grace.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Repurposing motor vehicle tires and turning them into things that we can wear.
Totally.
Like it just sits with me so right.
Yes.
And then when you get to meet those dudes, I'm like, just brothers from other mothers. Size 11?
Bro.
Size 11?
So good, yes.
Dude, I wasn't sure on a colour, so I thought,
I love it.
It's a nice
you know
colour.
what? It's perfect because I have black, so this is going to be just so amazing. I've got now a second pair of flip-flops.
Have you? It's 2 pairs.
Look at this.
Like you've already got a pair of Indosols?
No.
Yeah.
But this is the first of, hopefully, well, I'll wear through these. It'll take some time, and then they're vegan.
Dude, they're vegan. Dude,
I
eat
taste
it.
very
Dude.
good. I love it. Thank you so much, bro.
Dude, thank the guys at Indosol, they're legends. So.
I'll swing by and check out the store. And
but listen, like, I just want to thank you, man, for your time and energy. You know, like, it's a time commitment, and you know, we corresponded back and forth, and I'm really grateful, man. It means a lot to me, and you've taught me so much. So
thanks so much, bro. Yeah, it's an honor to be on the show. I really appreciate the invite and all that you're doing.
Thanks, brother. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten anything. Oh yeah, so if you like this episode and you want to ask Edward any questions, reach out to me on Instagram or reach out to Edward on his Instagram, and
sure, yeah.
And if you DM me, I promise I'll write back or pass any messages on. I'd love it if you wrote a review for me on iTunes, or just send me an email and give me some feedback. Like, and be honest, be brutal. Say, I don't like how you do this, or I don't like how you do that, because I want to improve and I want to make. I want to try and make a difference. It's what my way of being of service, and I'd like it if people help me. So thank you.
That's awesome, brother.
High five, brother.
Yeah, thanks so much.
All right, man. Let's go and get some rest.
Nice.
See ya.
Thanks, bro.